I'm Elizabeth at A Literary Princess. If you are new here, welcome. I have a PhD in English literature with a focus on Victorian women novelists, and as you might expect, I love to read. Today I have my April wrap-up for you. So I actually read 16 books in April, but 6 of those were picture books for the event Picture This, and I already did a wrap-up video for those. So here I will be wrapping up the remaining 10 books, 2 of which were for another event I was participating in, People April. So let's jump in. First up, we had a carryover from March. This is Ruth by Elizabeth Gaskell, which I was reading for my Elizabeth Gaskell project in March, and yep, finished it in April. Well, it's fine. This was a reread for me. I liked it, but not as much as a lot of Gaskell's other books. So I ultimately gave it 3.5 stars. It's more of like 3 3/4 of a star, but I don't really do quarter star ratings. So it's in everything as a half star, 3.5. This is about Ruth, a fallen woman in the Victorian period, and how that affects her life. As I said, I liked the writing and I liked the story well enough. There is just this part toward the last third where it stops focusing on Ruth herself and starts focusing on these other characters, and I really didn't appreciate that. And also the ending is Victorian. It's very Victorian. This is all I will say. I do have a whole video on this that does contain spoilers, do be warned, but I talk a lot more in detail about what I liked and didn't like about it. But yeah, 3.5 stars. Next up, we have a library book. This is House of Roots and Ruin by Erin A. Craig. It is a follow-up to the book House of Salt and Sorrows, which is a 12 Dancing Princesses retelling that I read several years ago for the first time, but that I reread, I think, last year. And so I decided that I wanted to continue with the series. It takes place, I think, 10 years or so after the first book ends, and we are focusing on the youngest of what was 12 sisters, but in the first book, many are killed off. So we are focusing on Verity, who has been kind of kept at home by their oldest sister, Camille, and she wants to, go out and see things and get away from home. So when she is asked by another noble family to come paint a portrait of their son, she basically runs away from home to do it. But sketchy stuff is happening at this guy's house. Really sketchy. So, it's a gothic story, gothic fantasy. I really enjoyed this. I gave it, how many stars did I give it? Oh, I gave it 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. I just like the way that Craig creates the atmosphere. I think she does a really good job with it, and it was a lot of fun. And I'm glad that I finally read it, because I thought at first I wasn't really gonna read it, because I thought that House of Salt and Sorrows worked really well as just a standalone. And also House of Roots and Ruin is not really a fairy tale retelling, which is what I was drawn to House of Salt and Sorrows for. But I'm really glad I read this because it was a lot of fun and really good. Next, we have one that I had been reading since November, and I'm finally done with it. This is The Complete Poems of Emily Dickinson, edited by Thomas H. Johnson. Look at this. Ma'am, you wrote so many poems. Yeah, this took me ages to get through because they're not really something you can just read a whole ton of all at once. I feel like with any poetry collection, especially one this large, it was kind of a mixed bag. There were some that I absolutely loved. There were others that I was like, not a fan. And there were a lot that I felt like weren't finished, But like some of the unfinished ones were marked as unfinished, but then there were so many that seemed unfinished that were not marked as unfinished. And I was like, girl, this is 2 lines. So I don't know. Wasn't always the biggest fan of all of them. However, I can appreciate that Emily Dickinson is a fantastic poet. Like truly, truly great mastery of the language. And I did like quite a few of them. So I gave this 4 stars. And now I can say that I have read all of Emily Dickinson's poetry. Next up is one that actually was a carryover from March as well, but it ended up working for People April. This is 7 Sisters, Captives and Rebels in Revolutionary Europe's First Family by Veronica Buckley. It is looking at the Habsburg dynasty and the 7 daughters of Empress Maria Theresia. So we've got, let's see if I can get them all. We've got Mariana, Marie Christine, Elizabeth, Carolina, Amalia, Josepha, and Antonia. And the really confusing thing about all of these is that all of them, their first name is actually Maria, and then it's the second part of their name. So Mariana's just like gets smushed together for some reason. I don't know. But yeah. This was really interesting. And this is not like a family that I know much about. It's not a time period that I am super into, but I have always enjoyed things about Marie Antoinette, who is the youngest daughter, Antonia. So I was drawn to it for that. And I learned so much. There were some wild things in here. Like I was reading parts out loud to my husband because I was like, babe, you're not gonna believe this. Some absolutely wild things. I think that having 7 of them to look at made it so I didn't always feel like I knew them all very well. And like some definitely felt pushed to the side in comparison to others. We also did get a fair amount about their brothers, particularly the oldest, Joseph, who became the emperor. I was also frequently confused by all of the names being so similar. Again, each of these sisters, their first name is Maria. And then the oldest brother is Joseph, but one of the girls is named Josepha. So like we've got Mariana and Marie Christine and Marie Antoinette. And then we've got Joseph and Josepha. And I'm like, y'all just need some new names. Please, please. Carolina and Amalia, their husbands both had the same name. And then, of course, when we go over to France with Marie Antoinette, everybody's just Louis. So it does get confusing. And I'm like, which one are you? So that was a little bit difficult. Added to the fact that there were so many of them that I never felt like I truly knew them very well. However, it was still really interesting and I enjoyed it a lot. I gave this 4 stars, and I'm probably going to be reading a biography focused just on Marie Antoinette at some point. Her story is so sad. Like, honestly, a lot of these women, their story is just really sad. Because you see, like, they had so little power about who they would marry and what was going on in the world. But then, like, Marie Antoinette's getting blamed for all these problems in France when really it was her husband's grandfather that most of the problems came from. Like, and yeah, then she got her head chopped off. So I'm definitely want to read more about her because she was my favorite of them. Although I was also very interested in Mariana and Marie Christine. Carolina and not Antonia. Carolina and Amalia were interesting as well, but I don't know. Marie Antoinette was the most interesting because of how tragic the story is, I think. And also, I felt like I knew her better than the others, probably because I have read things about her before. But yeah, this was 4 stars, and I would highly recommend it if you're interested in this. Next up was a library book that also counted for People April. This is The Possessed, Adventures with Russian Books and the People Who Read Them by Elif Batuman. This is a memoir focused on Batuman and her study of Russian literature and language. I had read The Idiot a few years ago, which is her first novel, and it's very much like autofiction. She draws a lot from her life and puts it into that book, and presumably with the sequel Either Or that I have not read yet. But this was super interesting, and I enjoy getting to see memoirs of people who are in grad school, because a lot of this takes place while she's in grad school. And that's always very interesting to me, of course, because I just finished grad school. And also talking a lot about literature, but also language. We do a lot of traveling here. She goes to Russia, she goes to Switzerland, she goes to, is it Uzbekistan? I should look that up. I think it actually might have been Kazakhstan. One of those. I don't have the book in front of me, so you know, it's hard to remember all the details, but it was really interesting. There were some real characters in this book, or in her life, because like, these are people in her life. These are real people. I really liked the chapter where she was at a Tolstoy conference. That was probably my favorite. Although the chapter about Dostoevsky's Demons, which has formerly been translated as The Possessed, was also very interesting. I'm really excited to read more from Batuman, particularly Either Or, to follow up The Idiot. I gave this 4 stars. And another library book, because why would I read the books that I own? This is The Long Game by Ava Reed. This is book 6 in the Game Changer series, but can also be seen as like kind of the book 2 of the stories of Shane and Ilya that starts in Heated Rivalry, which is book 2 of the Game Changer series. Very confusing. No, I've not read any of the other Game Changers books, just these 2. So Ilya and Shane have been in a relationship that's been a secret for 10 years. They're hockey players. And they're, you know, keeping it a secret is kind of draining for everybody involved. And this book is dealing with that. I'm not going to say much because, first of all, it would spoil Heated Rivalry if you have not read that and you want to. These books are just fun, okay? Are they the greatest pieces of literature out there? No. Am I having an absolutely marvelous time? Yes. I gave this 5 stars, and I cannot wait for season 2 of Heated Rivalry to see those actors play out some of these scenes, because they're really good actors. And there's one particularly emotional scene that I am really looking forward to. But yeah, 5 stars. I'm having a great time. And because I still don't want to read the books that I own, we have, yet again, another library book. This is Enamorada by Ava Reed. This is book 1 in what will be a duology called The House of Teeth. So we're following Lady Agnes, who... The whole thing is so confusing. How do I even explain this? They live in a country called I don't even know how to pronounce it, and it's not even in the summary. Anyway, a few generations ago, their island was taken over by a conqueror who is now the descendants of that person are the king. The noble houses were had magic. They don't anymore. Everything related to their magic was destroyed, libraries burned, people murdered. So the House of Teeth has 2 remaining members, both women. Marozia, who is the heiress, and then her cousin, Lady Agnes, who we are following. Lady Agnes does not speak. And even though Marozia is the heiress and is now Mistress of Teeth, Lady Agnes is really her grandmother's heir in the sense that her grandmother has tasked her with finding a way to bring the magic back. They arrange a marriage between Marozia and the Prince Leoprand. I don't know if I'm pronouncing any of these names right, by the way. They're like, the only normal name was Agnes the entire time. We've got Agnes, and then everyone else has a weird name. I'm like, okay. But then there's kind of something between Agnes and Leoprand. So I wanted to love this so much because I have loved everything else I've read by Ava Reid, which is like 4 books now, possibly 5. I don't remember. I don't know anymore. So I really wanted to like this, especially because there's been a bunch of controversy, particularly over on Threads, because people were mad that there is a lot of really disturbing content in this book, because this is a like kind of more of a gothic horror, grimdark fantasy with a romance than it is like just romantasy. So yeah, there are really, really brutal things that happen in this book. Like, violence, assault, like some super taboo stuff, like cannibalism and necrophilia. Like, there's a lot. And people have been like mad about that, and they're like, there should have been a trigger warning. Like, or you could just read the author's other works and know that she does this all the time. Like, I wasn't shocked by any of this. Ava Reid has written about cannibalism before, guys. Like, her books are always pretty dark. Given A Study in Drowning and A Theory of Dreaming are young adult, so they are less dark. But there's still, like, quite a lot of dark stuff there. So I don't know what people are complaining about with that. What bothered me is that halfway through, something happens. And I'm trying to be so vague here, but it changes the nature of the story. All of a sudden, the quest for restoring the magic is gone. Some changes happen to Lady Agnes as a character that I did not like. We then also have, toward the last third, like a time jump of several years, which I didn't like. And then the ending was something. Something. The entire time I was reading this, I was like, do I want to keep reading this? Because also the beautiful writing that I like Ava Reid for frequently was like too much here. It was over the top. It was oppressive almost. However, all that being said, I am going to read the next one because I'm really curious about what's gonna happen now. But also, like, I liked the first, like, setup of Lady Agnes so much that, I don't know, I'm, like, clinging to that, I guess, maybe. Once the romance got started, I was like, do we have to? Can we go back to looking for the forbidden magic? That's more fun. It's more fun, please. So yeah, I don't know. I had very complicated feelings about this book. I ultimately have given it 3 stars. For a while, I was thinking about 2.5. But then because I'm like, well, I am gonna read the next one, I think that's a fair, like 3 stars seems to be a fair rating. So yeah, it's not my favorite by her by a long shot. Definitely not her best. Is it one of her weirder ones? Yes. So yeah, if you're gonna pick this up, be aware that it's not like just romance. It's heavy and disturbing, very disturbing. But that's to be expected from Reid. So again, I don't know what people are complaining about. Anyway, moving on. Hey look, we finally get to one that I own. Cranford, which was my April book for the Elizabeth Gaskell project. I really enjoyed this. It was a big change from Inamorata. Inamorata. Like, night and day. This is just such like a sweet, lovely, feel-good book. Following the mostly female town of Cranford that is run by spinsters and widows for the most part. And it's just delightful. I have a whole video on this as well that does contain spoilers, so be aware of that. I gave this 4 stars. It is an episodic novel, which is not always my favorite. And I think I would have been happier with more through plot, but it's still really good. Next up is an ARC, Coffee Stains on My Books, which is a poetry collection by Stefania Lucchetti. It came out in 2024, but NetGalley was still offering it as an ARC, so I don't know. Lucchetti is a bilingual poet, so her poems, each of the poems appears twice, once in Italian and once in English, which was really interesting. As with, again, with any poetry collection, there were ones that I liked more than others. I ultimately gave this 3.5 stars. The like 2 languages was super interesting, even though I can't read Italian at all, but that was still super interesting to me. I will say the formatting of the ebook ARC was kind of off, but that's not Lucchetti's fault. It just made it kind of hard to, you know, read certain things. But yeah, some poems I liked quite a lot, others I was more meh about, but it was a solid poetry collection, and I'd definitely consider reading more by Lucchetti. And then the final book of the month is actually a reread, and it is Sanditon by Jane Austen, which I have here in a bind-up with Lady Susan and the Watsons. I only read Sanditon, though. I wanted to do a quick reread of this because I have written now, yay, and will be presenting a paper on Austen's niece, Anna Austen Lefroy, who tried her hand at a continuation of Sanditon. And I will say I also reread her continuation of Sanditon this month, as well as her novella, short story, whatever you want to call it, Mary Hamilton. I'm not counting those in my for my reads for the year though, because I already read them earlier this year, and I don't really know how to put that into my spreadsheet. So we're just going to ignore that. But yeah, I wanted to do a quick reread of Austen Sanditon so that I could remember, okay, what do we have here and how is Lefroy interacting with the original text and all that. So I did that in one day, mostly on a train ride into Cambridge to do some research at Harvard's Houghton Library, where their special collections is. There was a book there that is one of the few that actually talks about Lefroy's Mary Hamilton, so I went to look at that. And I read this on the train and had a lovely time. I gave this 4 stars, which is what I have always given it. It's not finished. The fact of the matter is it's not finished, and you can see the start of a great story here. And like kind of every time it's like, oh, this is gonna be so good, and then you're like, oh yeah, basically nothing happens because it's just the first 12 chapters. So, 4 stars. So that is my April wrap up. Let me know down in the comments, have you read any of these? What did you think of them? What did you read for April? Were you participating in People April? If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to see more of my bookish content. It has been great chatting with you. I will see you soon. Bye.